A case of a woman found dead by hanging, initially assumed to be a suicide. However, her spirit returns, asking the police to investigate the true cause of her death. This is Nate's own experience. He was a regular police officer stationed at a certain police station. One day, he was appointed to be a detective in Nonthaburi province because the deputy chief wanted a young, new person to work. So, a detective team was formed, consisting of Nate, the captain, and his friends, totaling 4 people. With Nate's desire to be a detective already in his heart, after being appointed on that day, the captain took Nate and the team to celebrate at a restaurant in the province. Everyone drank until almost morning. While they were there, suddenly a loud voice came from the radio, reporting an incident of a woman found dead by hanging in a dormitory. At that time, Nate's team didn't pay much attention because they weren't on duty. However, since the dormitory was only 2 kilometers away from the restaurant they were at, everyone took the opportunity to go and see the scene. At that moment, Nate volunteered to drive while the others sat in the car. When they arrived at the scene, the captain and the others got out of the car and went inside to see what happened, while Nate followed behind. As Nate entered the room where the incident occurred, he opened the door and saw the dead body of a woman still hanging in the middle of the room. He then asked the rescue team, "I see that the report has been made for a while. Why hasn't the body been taken down yet?" The rescue team turned to look at Nate and calmly replied, "The body is right here on the floor." Nate looked down and indeed saw the body lying on the floor. When he looked back to the middle of the room, all he could see was an empty rope. At that moment, he was so shocked that his hair stood on end. And Nate quietly told the rescue team, "If the investigation team comes to inspect the scene and finishes their work, don't forget to cut the rope, so that the spirit of the deceased can rest in peace." Then the detective team responsible for this case arrived. The captain told Nate and the others to take a break. On that day, while Nate was getting ready to sleep, he dreamed that he suddenly woke up on his bed to the sound of a woman crying in the room. He looked around slowly and saw a woman sitting at the end of his bed, crying. She pleaded with Nate, "Help me, please help me." Suddenly, Nate woke up because the phone on his bedside table rang loudly. It was the captain calling. When Nate answered, the captain asked, "Are you asleep? There's an urgent matter. Come meet me. I need to talk to you." Shortly after, Nate left the house and went to the meeting place, where he saw the detective team already waiting. While everyone was having meal, the captain turned to them and said, "Do you remember the case of the woman who was hanged that we just went to see? I want to work on that case. It's suspicious." At that moment, everyone looked at each other, but still spoke to the captain, saying, "We are a newly formed detective team, Captain. It wasn't our duty when the incident occurred. Moreover, there is already a team assigned to handle this case. If we intervene, it might seem like we're encroaching on the work of the other team, wouldn't it?" The captain sat in thought for a while but reiterated his desire to proceed with the investigation. Nate became curious and asked, "Why does the captain seem so eager to pursue this case?" The captain remained silent for a moment and then said, "She came to me in a dream, asking for my help." Everyone in the circle fell silent, staring at the captain's face. Nate realized that they must have all experienced something similar, so he asked the captain how he encountered it. The captain paused for a moment and then recounted the dream he had, where he heard a woman crying at the end of his bed, and she pleaded for help. Then, the others in the team spoke up, saying they experienced the same thing. After finishing their meal, the captain instructed them to go back and rest first, and they would discuss the matter again later. When Nate arrived home, before he could even go to bed, the captain called again and said that the deputy in charge of their detective team had asked everyone to meet at the police station urgently because he had something to discuss with them. As soon as everyone arrived, the deputy casually tossed a case file onto the table and instructed everyone, "Take care of this case." The captain opened the file to find it was about a woman who had been found hanging. He then asked the deputy why he was assigning them this case out of the blue. The deputy simply replied, "Don't ask too many questions. Just take care of this case and make sure it's successful." As the captain and the team delved into the file, they discovered some abnormalities. Forensic examination revealed semen stains in the victim's birth canal, suggesting she might have been sexually assaulted before deciding to end her life. Further investigation revealed prior findings. The woman had a troubled mental state, no ID, and no traceable information. Given her troubled history, there wasn't much interest in her case. The team decided to start locally, asking around the neighborhood if anyone recognized or had seen the woman. Unfortunately, no one seemed to know her. With her troubled background, there wasn't much attention given to her. During their team meeting, the team then convened and concluded, at this point, there's probably nothing else for us to investigate further. The captain decided they would simply report it as a case of sexual assault, since they couldn't do much else. That day, they arranged to drive together to inform the deputy. As they were driving, they passed by a dormitory, the site of the incident. Next to it was a newly constructed condominium. Nate noticed the captain gazing up at the building for a while. The captain instructed him to park the car. Everyone asked the captain if something was wrong. He turned to them and replied, "I saw that woman up there. She was standing on the new construction building. We shall go take a look." Now everyone walked towards the building. The captain led them to the spot where he had seen the woman. He took out a flashlight and shone it around, but found nothing except construction equipment filling the area. The captain remarked how strange it was that despite the building being so close to the incident site, no one seemed to have noticed or cared about it. Seeing the ghost of the woman earlier made him think there must be something peculiar about the building. The next morning, they all went back to the construction site. They approached the site manager and informed him that they were police officers investigating the adjacent building. They asked how many workers were there, where they stayed, and what their situation was. The captain questioned as usual until he learned that there were a total of 50 workers assigned to the building. However, only 48 remained. 2 had left for Ratchaburi province 2 weeks ago. Everyone on the investigation team began to think back to the day of the incident, which coincided with exactly 2 weeks ago. They suspected there might be something odd, but it could also be purely coincidental. The captain instructed the site manager to help contact the missing workers. However, the manager explained that they had already tried several times to no avail. They couldn't reach them. The captain asked if the missing workers were from Ratchaburi, considering they had gone there. But the site manager replied they were not. They were from Udon Thani province. Nate began to feel suspicious. Why would someone from Udon Thani province go to Ratchaburi? And why couldn't they be contacted? The captain handed over his business card and instructed the manager to call them if they made contact. 3 days passed, and there was still no communication. Nate decided to visit the construction site again, but he was informed that they still couldn't contact the missing workers. They hadn't shown up either. Nate decided they would have to wait. One day, while the team was waiting around, Nate and the others were watching TV at the police station. They flipped through channels to pass the time. There were travel shows, cooking shows, and then they stumbled upon a travel program. In the show, they announced, "Today, we'll take you on a tour of Photheram District, Ratchaburi Province." At that moment, no one thought much of it until they changed the channel to a cooking show where they said, "Today, we'll show you the local cuisine of Photheram District, Ratchaburi Province." They switched channels again to a news report. The news anchor said, "Today, we'll take you to the annual event in Photheram District, Ratchaburi Province." It was then that they realized every channel was featuring Photheram District, Ratchaburi Province. Someone jokingly remarked, "Why is everything about Photheram District? It's all Ratchaburi Province. It's like I want to go to Ratchaburi now." Everyone turned to look at each other, and then they decided to head to Photheram District, Ratchaburi Province immediately. At that moment, they didn't really know why they were going, but they had a strong feeling that something was definitely up. When they arrived, with no information whatsoever, they didn't know where to start. But they decided to begin at the place they were most familiar with, the police station in that province. The captain happened to know someone there, so he asked about construction sites. His friend mentioned there were hundreds of construction sites in the province, making it difficult to search them all. Meanwhile, they received a call about a disturbance at a bar and were asked to check it out. Thinking it was just a typical bar fight, Nate didn't know where to continue the investigation. But with nothing much else to do, he felt curious about seeing the police's work in that province, so he decided to tag along. During the interrogation, they were asked how long they'd been in Ratchaburi Province. They said just 2 days and claimed they were there for a vacation. Nate then asked, "What were you doing before this?" The two individuals responded, "We were working at a construction site." Nate then mentioned the name of the construction site and asked if it was where they worked. They were startled but denied it, saying it wasn't the site. However, Nate presented all the evidence, including the construction site's information and their documents, and firmly told them, "Don't deny it. I have all the information. I know you've been here for almost 2 weeks, not just 2 days." The suspects remained silent when asked, "Why did you flee to Ratchaburi? What were you doing?" Nate tried to press them further, but they continued to deny any wrongdoing, claiming they were just on vacation. Nate then showed them a photo of the deceased woman and asked, "Why did she end up dead? What did you do?" When they saw the photo, their faces visibly changed, but they continued to deny involvement, saying they didn't do anything. Nate told them, "If you don't tell the truth about what you did, I can't help you. But if you speak directly and provide enough information, I can still assist." However, they persisted in their denials. Finally, Nate said, "It's okay. We have the victim's DNA found on the corpse. We'll do a DNA test to confirm if you were involved or not." Upon hearing this, the suspects quickly started confessing. They apologized and admitted that they hadn't intended to harm her. They explained that day they were heavily drunk, having consumed several bottles of beer. They admitted to sexual assaulting the woman but feared she might report them to the police, so they fled to Ratchaburi to evade responsibility. They never anticipated that she would end up dead. Following their confession, both suspects were taken into custody to face legal proceedings.